Remember that time way back in the day when the light subclasses had 3 trees to pick from and you were stuck with one of the 3? Well, those days are about to be in the past. Heads up everybody, my name is SentinelGray, and welcome to class. Yeah, I know, I changed up my intro a little bit. I'm trying to lean more into the teaching aspect of things because I've been told a lot that that's what I'm really good at, and I'm a really good teacher, so I'm gonna lean into that. I'm gonna steer into the skid, as you will. But video stuff, you want to know about the light subclasses, right? And how they're all getting the stasis treatment in terms of their customization and synergy, starting with Void 3.0. For those of you that have no idea what I mean, let me break it down for you a little bit. The stasis subclasses all work very well together. They freeze, slow, and shatter, and each one of them is very much geared towards one of those effects. Void, Arc, and Solar are getting the same exact treatment with their own unique status effects, buffs, debuffs, fragments, and aspects. The power that is kicking all of this off is Void. Now, the reason this new adaptation of Void is called 3.0 is because in Destiny 1 we had Void 1.0 with a fair amount of freedom. When Destiny 2 first released, they restricted our freedom of subclass building and simply made like 3 separate trees that did different things. That was Void 2.0. Now, finally, we are here at Void 3.0 and our buildcraft potential seems to be so much more. I'm going to go over everything Void 3.0. And to make this a whole lot easier, I'm going to break it down into sections. First, buffs and debuffs. Next, fragments. After that, aspects. And finally, class abilities, which goes into like grenades, melees, and supers. So let's begin with the buffs and debuffs that the Void subclasses play with so heavily. First, the buffs. Overshield. Yes, literally overshields. These overshields are basically bonus health and can be indicated 3 separate ways. 1, the blue bar over your health at the top of your screen. 2, the Void Overshield, quote unquote, buff that pops up in the lower left hand corner of your screen with the rest of all your buffs and debuffs. And 3, a Void Aura around your Guardian. The more overshields you have, the stronger the purple glow around your character. Most of the time you'll just see this on your arms because you're in first person, but if you're wielding a sword, you'll see it all over your whole body. This buff is mostly found coming from Titan abilities, but can also be achieved from the Hunters and Warlocks as well. It just takes a little bit more work. Next up is Devour. Devour should be familiar to those of you who main Warlock. For those of you who don't, let me explain what Devour does. When Devour is activated, any kills, no matter if it's with abilities, weapons, or external armaments like a Scorch Cannon, they grant you health, grenade energy, and increase the timer on Devour itself. Overall, Devour is an ability that can absolutely save your life as a solo player and is still very easily accessible on Warlocks primarily. But, just like Overshields, you can activate Devour on Hunters and Titans as well. It just takes, like a little finesse. Finally, we have Invisibility, a staple trait of the Hunters. Luckily, Invis is straightforward. You become completely invisible and pull 0 aggro from any AI enemies, and you barely ever ping on a radar from enemy players. But, like I've said already, but I want to make a blanket statement here. Each of these buffs can be given or applied by any class in the game. So yes, Titans can go Invis, Warlocks can have an Overshield, and Hunters can use Devour. Bungie is building the new Light 3.0 subclasses that way so that no class is restricted on what they can do. The caveat to this is that these buffs are much easier to apply on the original classes that had them than the others. For an example, Warlocks can activate Devour on literally every single ability kill no matter what it is, while Hunters and Titans need to first pick up an Orb of Power with a very specific fragment activated to even get Devour to proc in the first place. The general gist is any class can do anything, but it's far easier for some. Moving on to debuffs. Volatile is a debuff that is shown by a swirling void effect around the enemy. While volatile, if an enemy either dies or takes enough damage, they explode in a void energy explosion, which has been extremely key for crowd control. Suppress is something that Hunters and Titans should be familiar with. Whether you or an enemy is suppressed, you can't activate abilities, and if you're using any abilities while you get suppressed, like a super or something like that, you automatically get kicked out of it. This has been extremely nice against the new Lucent Hive enemies. Finally, we have Weaken. While Weaken is applied to a target, they take additional damage from all sources, so that means abilities and weapons. I'm talking everything. With a combination of all those buffs and debuffs, you can see why this iteration of Void was so well received. But I still have yet to go through the real meat of all the subclasses, and I'm going to go over that next. Fragments in the Void subclasses are just like they are in Stasis. They can be used and equipped on any class and come with a wide variety of effects, though the amount of fragments you can have equipped at one time is heavily dependent on the aspects you're running. But I will get to those later, so do not worry. Void fragments and their effects are as follows. Echo of Explosion. Void ability kills cause enemies to explode. Also gives you plus 10 intellect. Echo of Provision. Damaging enemies with grenades grants melee energy. Minus 10 strength. Echo of Exchange. Melee final blows grant grenade energy. Echo of Remnants. Lingering grenade effects have increased duration. Echo of Reprisal. Final blows while surrounded by combatants grant super energy. Echo of Undermining. Void grenades weaken enemies. Minus 20 discipline. Echo of Resistance. Void buffs applied have increased duration. Minus 10 mobility. Echo of Leeching. Melee final blows start health regeneration for you and nearby allies. Plus 10 resilience. Echo of Domineering. After suppressing a target, gain greatly increased mobility for a short duration, and your equipped weapon is reloaded from reserves. Plus 10 discipline. And Echo of Dilation. While crouched, you sneak faster and gain enhanced radar resolution. Plus 10 mobility and intellect. Now, even with all those fragments, there are still 4 specific ones that are not unlocked right out the gate. These fragments you have to buy from my core array in the tower to use, but they are extremely worth it. I highly suggest you do so. Echo of Instability. Defeating targets with grenades grants volatile rounds to your void weapons, plus 10 strength. Echo of Harvest. Defeating weakened targets with precision final blows will create an orb of power, minus 10 intellect. Echo of Obscurity. Finisher final blows grant invisibility, plus 10 recovery, and Echo of Starvation. Picking up an orb of power grants Devour, minus 10 recovery. Like I said before, you can use these fragments in multiple different combinations on any of the classes in the game, which, for example, is how Titans can go invisible. Now, getting a little bit more specific, each of the classes have aspects that alter the way they fight considerably more than the fragments. These aspects also give you a number of slots to equip fragments to, making some builds have a little bit more potential than others. Let me go over each of the aspects. First, for Titans. Bastion. Casting your barricade ability generates overshield for yourself and nearby allies. Those bunkering behind the shield will regenerate overshield over time and extend the overshield's duration. Controlled Demolition. Hitting a target with a void ability or a volatile detonation will make them volatile. And Offensive Bulwark. While you have overshield or are inside the Ward of Dawn, grenades charge significantly faster and you have increased melee damage. You also gain an additional shield throw for your Sentinel Shield super. Now for Warlocks, we have Chaos Accelerant. Hold down the grenade button to overcharge only the Vortex, Axion Bolt, Scatter, and Magnetic grenades. Magnetic grenades overcharge into handheld supernovas. Child of the Old Gods. Cast your Rift to summon a Void Soul. When you damage an enemy with your weapon, your Void Soul will launch itself towards them and detonate nearby, attaching draining tendrils that damage and weaken the target. When your Void Soul deals damage, it restores either melee and grenade energy, if running a healing rift, or health, if running an empowering rift. Defeating an enemy who is being drained grants rift energy. And finally, Feeding the Void. Defeat an enemy with a Void ability to activate Devour. Lastly, we have Hunters. Stylus Executioner. Defeating a void debuffed target, which means they are either weakened, suppressed, or volatile, grants invisibility and true sight. While invisible and after a stylish execution, your next melee attack weakens enemies. Trapper's Ambush. Players can activate Quick Fall to spend their melee charge and dive to the ground, creating a smoke cloud upon impact. Enemies caught in the cloud are weakened and allies become invisible. In addition, snare bombs, upon attaching to surfaces or enemies, cause nearby allies to become invisible. And finally, Vanishing Step. Dodging makes you invisible. As of making this video, every class only has 3 unique aspects, but I wouldn't leave it out that it has a huge possibility that Bungie could add more in the future, or change them, or what have you. Also, whenever you're equipping aspects, remember that you can only have 2 activated at a time, which does add to some variety without you being too overpowered. The last section I want to talk about is all about your abilities with Void 3.0, because if you're familiar with the old Void 2.0 setup, this is going to be a little bit different. The biggest difference you might notice is that every class can use every single grenade, which means Warlocks and Hunters can use the old Titan Suppression Grenade, and Titans and Hunters can use the Warlock Vortex Grenade. All of these grenades are interchangeable and can be used in a multitude of different ways. However, you don't have access to them right out the get-go. First, you need to go speak to Ikora Ray in the tower. The grenades you do not have unlocked on that character can be unlocked there just by spending a little bit of Glimmer, so it shouldn't be too terribly expensive. In addition to that, the Titan and Warlock classes have brand new melee abilities for Void 3.0. This comes in the form of the Warlock's Pocket Singularity ability, which I can only best describe as a Void Kamehameha ball from Dragon Ball Z that will home in on nearby targets and make them volatile. It's a lot. And then the Titan Sentinel shield. You heard me right. That shield that Titans used to throw in their super, that thing, yeah, that's a melee ability now, and that gives you a bit of overshield per enemy you hit with it. For Hunters, you guys still have your smoke bomb, or snare bomb as the game calls it, which damages and weakens enemies inside the smoke. For those of you who might be worried about your super abilities, don't. All of them are still in the game, except for one because it kind of got infused into another one, but that's only on Titan, so don't worry. Hunters, you still have your Deadfall and Mobius Quiver, which causes enemies tethered to it to take increased damage from all sources, though Mobius Quiver is going to be your better bet for dealing ability damage specifically. Along with that, you have your Spectral Blades, which can be used to clean up large groups of enemies that aren't exactly huddled around each other. You're fast moving and quick killing. Warlocks, both of your Nova Bombs are still intact, with Vortex and Cataclysm still being very strong for their purpose. Vortex being good for either zone defense or damage over time on a stationary boss, and Cataclysm being the best at burst DPS. Finally, for Warlocks, you have your Nova Warp, which is great crowd control and can even make short work of lower end yellow barred enemies. Now for Titans, we only have 2 options. One is the Ward of Dawn super, which is a protective bubble that gives you and your allies overshield while you are inside, while also merely passing through the bubble gives you Weapons of Light, which increases your weapon damage for a time. The other option is the Banner Shield. Banner Shield can protect you and your allies from incoming damage if you're pointing the way that the damage is coming from. Also, for those allies that are standing behind you, it gives them Weapons of Light. Though this super is more of a cross between offensive and defensive, it's a little bit of a better bet if you don't want to always play support. So did you make it through class? Did you fall asleep? Did you take notes? I actually didn't expect you to take notes, so don't worry. But that is Void 3.0 all summed up, at least as much as I can sum it up currently. Since Destiny is a game that's constantly being updated, things could always change, whether it's adding or taking away something. And I could have gone a step further and given you the hard numbers for things like the weakened debuff, tethered, Weapons of Light, and all of that. But honestly, those shift around so much and so often that that type of info might quickly get outdated. But that is it for this video, guys. I want to thank you all so much for watching, and I hope the video helped you understand Void 3.0 a little bit better. If you'd like me to make a video of the builds I commonly run for this new iteration of Void, just let me know. It might be a good starting point for a lot of you to start, build crafting yourself. Anyway, I'm going to go. I will see you all next time. And remember, keep your heads up and be kind to each other. Bye now.